Welcome everyone to the SF Bay Area School Counselors and Education Professionals Meetup Group. This is our first ever meetup, so I'm really excited to have you all here. And I'm really excited to have our first speaker as well, Molly Kitts, and her presentation, which is going to be called Leading Counseling Programs that are Student-Centered. Kitts joins us with 8 years of working within the San Francisco Unified School District, where she now serves as the assistant principal at Galileo High School in San Francisco. Graduating from University of San Francisco with her BA in sociology and a minor in psychology, it was during this time that she discovered her passion for the field of counseling. She went on to get her MA in school counseling and her pupil personnel services credential from the University of San Francisco. And after completing graduate school, she worked primarily with at-risk students within the SFUSD in both big school and smaller, more comprehensive environments. During this time, she served in a variety of leadership roles, including providing district-level PD for counselors on best practices for counseling seniors, working to increase access to dual enrollment classes for historically underserved students, and organizing an annual overnight college tours for AVID students. I'd also like to thank counselhero.com for being our sponsor today. The SF Bay Area School Counselors and Education Professionals Meetup Group would not be possible without them. Here to talk a little bit more about what Counsel Hero does is Counsel Hero's CEO, NS Sen. And then we can get started with the presentation.
Welcome everyone, welcome to our first event and first speech. Thanks for organizing this, Xavier. I am quite excited about talking that many of education professionals and school counselors. I myself am not an educator, but I am an education volunteer, and I was volunteering for a nonprofit in San Francisco Bay Area, which is called the organization is called BayCC, and I was spending some time with high school students, and there I've seen many of them are not aware which career path to follow, how they will decide what are the requirements for specific career paths, educational paths, and the main resource for them was school counselors. But I've seen it is not easy for them to reach out to school counselors and get answers to their questions. Then I was an edtech entrepreneur before I co-founded a coding bootcamp. Then I thought we can build an online environment for this, and we can help students to find answers to their questions, and we can also help school counselors to lower their caseload and interact with their students in a better way. We came up with the idea of Counsel Hero. We had lots of meetings with education professionals, and right now we are a team of 11 people, and we have an up and running product. So we are still in the beginning phase. We are trying to build an education community, and we will organize a lot of events like this. In 2 weeks, we are hosting the 2021 School Counseling Convention. So you can also check our website, our pages to learn more about the convention. So right now, what we need is your feedback. So we are working hard to deliver a fruitful product and to help many counselors, many education professionals, many students about their problems. So anything can help us. One feedback, one comment, one motivational word as well. So thanks for being part of this event. I don't want to extend any words, and thanks for organizing this.
Thank you, Enes. Now we have Molly Kitts, and please everyone give your full attention to her as she starts her presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to be able to share with other counselors and other education professionals the work that we've been engaged in, and to just have discussion and Q&A after. So my topic today is leading counseling programs that are student-centered. And as you'll see on the visual that I have to start out, I'm going to kind of be talking about the path of school counselors and how we've kind of evolved from a model of guidance counseling to really using data to drive our interventions and how we reach students to ensure that we're really using a student-centered approach in our counseling. So you guys heard a little bit about me, but I was going to just kind of recap some key things from my background that I think impact the work that I do in schools and within my counseling team. So in my senior year of undergrad, I worked with Upward Bound and taught SAT prep and also served as a counselor. And for anyone that's unfamiliar, Upward Bound's focused on working with students who will be first in their family to go to college and or low income, trying to make sure that they kind of have access to all the different opportunities post-secondary. In my graduate school counseling program, I interned at both the middle school and the high school level. A lot of what I'm going to present on is from my work in high schools, but I do think that it lends itself to middle school and elementary as well. My first year as a school counselor, I work in San Francisco Unified, and I was split between two high schools, one large high school that had about 2,000 students and one small high school that had around 650 students. And I was part-time at both. So I'd spend like Monday, Wednesday, Friday at one school, Tuesday, Thursday at another. And I was serving as an EWI counselor. And for anyone not familiar with the acronym, in our district, EWI is our early warning indicator students. So they're students that had low attendance or low GPA when they were coming into high school. And so therefore they're more at risk for dropping out. So I was working with a lot of them and just kind of noticing all the different experiences that they had had prior in the education system, trauma backgrounds, a lot of different barriers to their access to education. And that really influenced my work as a counselor. Following that first year, I then became full-time at the small high school that I was at, and I served as a counselor for all grade levels. So I had a mix of every grade level at the school, as well as I had a caseload of AVID students. And again, for anyone unfamiliar with AVID, it's focused on students who will be first gen in their family to go to college or low income, and really helping teach them like the study skills and organizational skills that they'll need when they get to college, as well as increasing their college exposure. So we did a lot of field trips and also organized the first overnight field trip that we took students on to explore different schools. And during my time as a counselor, I became, I think, most motivated by just the opportunities to advocate for students and address for equity issues in the school that affect their access to different post-secondary options. And that's really what led to me deciding to become an administrator. And I now serve as an assistant principal at a large high school in San Francisco. It's around 18, our student population kind of hovers between 1,800 to 1,900 students. And some of the main areas that I oversee are our counseling, our special education, our ELD program, 504 plans, master schedule, and our coordinated care team. So just to kind of start, I thought kind of addressing this question that sometimes we might get of, isn't all counseling student-centered? I think it's easy to think of school counseling as automatically being centered around the student. But in reality, I think there are a lot of ways where sometimes it can become not student-centered. And our district has this vision, our vision of student success, and I think it lends itself really well to looking at student-centered counseling programs. So it says, each and every student will graduate from high school ready for college and career and equipped with the skills, capacities, and dispositions outlined in the graduate profile. And this visual over on the right is our district's image of our graduate profile, and it houses different components that we want our students to graduate with. But the two that I wanted to highlight were career and life skills and sense of purpose and sense of self. And the reason that I'm bringing that up is that I think sometimes we can think of school counseling, it's easy to think of the specific tasks that counselors engage in, like scheduling, transcript review, what's required for graduation, but it's really these components of career and life skills and sense of purpose and sense of self that call on us to really think about our whole wheelhouse and everything that we do need to provide to students. And down below, I just have some areas that I thought are kind of good for everyone can kind of reflect on their own program or capacity that they work in. Just thinking about these specific areas and how in your school are these things student-centered or maybe not student-centered. So looking at things like students' access to their counselor, how visible are the counselors? Do students know how to access their counselor? Is it easy to access? What do the counselors offer? Is it just mainly focusing on like course selection and graduation? Is there a curriculum? Are social emotional learning needs addressed? As well as what does AP and dual enrollment access and information look like? Do students know what these things are? Do they know the benefits? Is it open to everyone? What does that look like? Is the counseling comprehensive? So do students know about all post-secondary options and how are those options presented to them? Access to scholarship and college and career info. Specifically, what pieces of this do the counselors hold? And if you interact with CBOs at your school, is all of it being pushed off onto the CBOs, or is there a partnership happening, and how do those different people hold the different parts involved? For course selection, what does that look like? Is it comprehensive? What does the process look like for how students select their courses and what information is accessible to them? And then lastly, like course support and counseling interventions. When students are struggling in a course, what does that process look like? If a student's asking to come out of class or a teacher's asking for a student to be moved, what does that follow-up and process look like? So kind of coming back to our grounding work, the American School Counseling Association really spells out for us what the foundation for our school counseling program should be. And I thought that these bullet points really hit well with this idea of student-centered counseling. So we're called on to provide students with standards-based counseling curriculum. And the key point here is all these different areas that it's supposed to address. It needs to address academic, career, and social emotional development. We need to also analyze our data to identify struggling students. And then this piece I think is really important, that counselors do have a role in the design and implementation of MTSS. So that's the whole idea that our counseling programs need to be tiered, and we need to be making sure that we have services that are going to all our students, and then thinking strategically and looking at data to see what are the services that some of our students need, and then what are the services that we still have students that need that more intensive support. And the last point here is another one I like to highlight, which is the counselor's role in advocating for equitable education for all students and removing systemic barriers. And I think that sometimes counselors can feel like they're not leaders in the school. And I actually think that counselors are positioned to be huge leaders in the school because they have direct insight into a lot of the systems that are impacting the students the most. And so counselors have a role where they do need to advocate for the changes that they see need to happen, and administrators need to partner with them to really hear what they're noticing and where shifts need to happen. So what counseling practices are not student-centered? So just wanted to talk a little bit about counseling. If the counseling is only happening on a one-to-one basis, so like if there's no classroom curriculum, no small groups, it's only happening on a one-to-one basis, that's not serving all the students. I mean, it's not making sure that they all are having like a core curriculum understanding or a core base of knowledge, and it's not addressing all those different standards that we went over. Also, if it's only student requested, then only the students asking for the help are receiving it. And if it's only responsive, then there's no solid program vision, there's no overall foundation of what's trying to be provided, you're just kind of in reaction mode. So there needs to be that comprehensive program. For course selection, we need to think about what are students learning? Course selection shouldn't just be a process of going into classrooms and having students select their courses, but what information are we providing them so that they can think about their courses in connection with their interests, their possible career path, and how are we describing AP and dual enrollment and pathway classes so that students are encouraged to think about them for themselves and also think about the possible benefits. If we're just laying out, here's AP, sign up for it if you want, there are probably some students that don't know what AP is or what it entails. And so really making sure that the information in these presentations is comprehensive. Also with post-secondary options, just how are they described and what is recommended for who? We want to make sure that all students hear about all the options and that also benefits of all those options are laid out to them, you know, that the benefits that exist within community college are presented too, as well as four-year college, so that students can really think about what they feel like is right for them and they have access to all the information. And also just thinking about letter of rec process and availability. How easy is it for a student to ask their counselor for a letter of rec? I know lots of schools use, you know, a profile or something that you ask students to fill out so that you can write the best possible letter of recommendation. But we also have to make sure that that process isn't a barrier for some students and that we're supporting them through that process and that they all are able to have access to a letter of rec. TA periods, I think, are another interesting thing to look at, especially, I know this is common at the high school level, but what is the purpose of the TA period? Is it because there aren't enough classes to fill what students need? And if so, then that's really a master schedule issue that needs to be looked at to ensure that enough class sections are offered. And TA should really be for students who maybe have a career interest in the area that they're going to TA in, or they can explain to their college why they opted to have a TA period because maybe the rest of their schedule is a little bit challenging and it's giving them a chance to catch up, whatever it may be. But they need that guidance from their counselor about how to explain that TA period on their college app, as well as their parents should have the opportunity to be involved in that process. It shouldn't be something that's just being done without their parent having input or family having input into the decision to have a TA period. And then looking at data, what data and outcomes are looked at regularly within the program and how are decisions made about what services are going to be provided, and who is at the center of the decisions about services. Are we thinking about students? When we're thinking about services we're going to be providing, or other stakeholders kind of coming into the equation, and maybe why is that? So just making sure that all the services are really being thought of with students at the center. And lastly, schedule changes. What factors into the decision around schedule changes, who makes the decision, and what supports are given for students struggling in a class. So this one I think can be a little bit touchy, but the idea that, obviously within the first 6 weeks of the semester, maybe some students change their mind. But I think a lot of times when students are asking for schedule changes later on, and it's because they're struggling in a class, it's really on us as the school site to try and come at it from a lens of support and figure out how we can help the student be successful in that class. So there has to be a plan of support and not just an automatic, oh yeah, I'll switch you to this other class, if it's really a question of us needing to provide that additional help. So I just wanted to provide some examples of shifts that we've made within the department that I oversee in order to kind of address these student-centered issues. So one is we really focused in on our communication with our students and our families. And we noticed that there was kind of like a lot of different channels of communicating events and announcements to students. And some would read them, some wouldn't, but it was kind of hit or miss, too many emails, not a central place of information. So we really focused in, and now what we do is every Monday we send a weekly newsletter to our students and our families. And that newsletter really contains all the opportunities that week that are happening for students, as well as upcoming scholarships, upcoming program opportunities. Then we also started sending a quarterly update to our students and families that is more a place for us to share our vision and overall kind of like what just happened that the counselors did. So we can provide an update to our families about what curriculum their student received in the classroom. And we can also kind of share what maybe our vision or theme is for like that current part of the school year. We also built out a comprehensive counseling website that has all the tools that students can use on it. It also does have all our events, our announcements, everything is on there. But more so what it's designed for is that in classroom presentations, counselors can point out and use tools that are on the website. So students then kind of know what's there and could reference the tool later. And it also can be used one-on-one with students. So if a counselor is meeting with a student and they're wanting to do a career assessment, they can show them where it is on the website and they can go through that activity together. We also this year launched a Google Classroom that has a lot of these activities embedded. So the students can also participate on it through the Google Classroom. And we also started a process of creating an annual calendar where we calendar out all our events, and it's also shared with our families. Another shift we made was with our schedule change process. When first coming to the school, there really was not a set schedule change process. It was kind of each counselor handled it how they felt it should be. They'd either say yes or no. There was no kind of delineated process. So we really rolled out trying to institute a process where after the first 6 weeks of school, there is a process of meeting with the student and counselor and teacher together to create a support plan. And we also are now rolling out an interventions chart that just kind of lays out different curricular interventions, counseling interventions, if there's behavior issues happening, what behavior interventions are available so that those can be referenced in the support plan. We also started doing counseling curriculum. So prior to my start at Galileo, there was some counseling curriculum happening mainly in the AVID classes, but not across the board. And we now deliver curriculum fall and spring in every grade level. We also shifted to open enrollment for all our classes. So AP, pathways, students have access to what they want to sign up for. There is no teacher recommendation or other barriers put in place. We make sure, this is where comprehensive course selection is important. We make sure students know what is entailed in AP and what they are signing up for, and that they also know the benefits of those classes and what they can gain from being in an AP class or a pathway. But they have access should they want it. And then we also started an AVID AP and CTE fair, where 9th and 10th grade students in their PE class get to go to tables manned by the teacher of the AVID AP CTE pathway classes, and they can explore and get to talk to the teachers, see sample projects to encourage their involvement in those opportunities. We also revised our TA process to make sure that there was this component of involving the family and the counselor explaining like the possible benefits, but also kind of how TA can look on a college application and how to address that to make sure that students are only selecting a TA if they really understand the implications and want to be a teacher's assistant. And we also have a partnership with an organization in our district called African American Leadership Initiative. That's a district initiative. And we're a school that has what's called an OLLI Advanced program. So we work with them specifically around best practices for serving our African American students. And two of the things that have come out of that partnership is we started doing teacher grade check-ins for any specifically, we started with African American and Latinx students, but it's now expanded to more students doing these specific teacher grade check-ins for students who had D's and F's. And what that looks like is the counseling team designed a teacher grade check-in sheet that actually has like sentence starters and a graphic organizer that can be used both on the teacher's end and on the student's end to conduct a teacher grade check-in that really entails, here is my goal for what I would like my grade to be. What can I do to get there? And the teacher and the student making a concrete plan to improve their grade, as well as four-year planning happening one-to-one between counselor and student, where they're not only discussing what courses they're going to take, but also like what career assessments they've maybe explored, what careers they're thinking of, what extracurriculars they're involved in, and how that connects. And then we also started using a CBO tracker. We have many CBOs that we work with at our school, but one of the things that was happening was that a lot of the college counseling was falling on the CBOs. And then the counselors also didn't really have any awareness of like who was being met with the CBO and what services were being provided. So we created a tracker that the CBOs fill out so the counselors can easily see who's meeting and who's getting services from which CBOs, and also not just which CBO, but what is being accomplished in that meeting. Like, did they meet about financial aid? Did they complete their application? Did they get an SAT waiver? Did they do a college search? So then the counselor can kind of see where they might need to fill in services for that student. And this also really led to us having a stronger partnership with our CBOs, and we started doing more PD in our counseling meetings to help counselors feel confident to also provide those college and financial aid counseling aspects so that in team we can all make sure that the students have access. Another thing that we started doing is our PDSA cycle, which is Plan, Do, Study, Act, also called ROSI cycles in some school districts. But we really make it a yearly intention to look at data and then set a department goal around that data. And last year, our goal was around our financial aid completion. And so the counselors have started doing regular push-in lessons regarding financial aid for seniors, and we're going to be starting this year doing it for juniors as well. And one of the things that we noticed when we looked at that data was that our African American and our Latinx students were completing financial aid at a disproportionately lower rate. And so we wanted to address that. And before, we had only done financial aid via like an evening presentation and then kind of follow-ups with individual students. But instead now we've started pushing into our senior economics classes, and we'll be also pushing into junior classes to try and get that information on more of a tier 1 level. And then lastly, one more recent thing that we've done is we conducted needs assessments with our students, teachers, staff, and families to just get some feedback from them on how they've seen these changes and what's working for them and what their needs are. So I wanted to share just a little bit because I thought it might help provide context, and it's always helpful to kind of come back to the data, what the impacts have been for us. So this is some data from our 2018 to 2019 classroom presentations, and this is from the 9th grade presentation that was delivered. And so you'll see the pre-post test question that we asked the students. So they were given a pre-test before the presentation was delivered, and then a post-test at the end of the presentation to see if their knowledge in these areas, we saw an increase like we would hope. So what you'll see is, like with the first question, I have a good understanding of A to G. In the pre-test, the level was the gray bar under strongly agree. That's how many students strongly agreed they had a good understanding of A to G. And then in the post-test, the purple, we saw a 121% increase in students saying that they had a good understanding of A to G, that they could strongly agree with that statement. And we saw a decrease in how many students were neutral towards this statement and how many students strongly disagreed with that statement. And similarly, we saw a similar pattern with familiarity with college systems. We saw that increase where we would hope in students post-test saying that they're familiar with college systems. This is our 10th grade data, and the question that we asked them in the pre-test protest was, I have a 4-year plan for the classes I want to take to meet A to G graduation requirements. And I realized too that I've talked about A to G, but we might have people participating who aren't in California, but A to G is our graduation requirements that align with our Cal States and our UCs for admission. So our graduation requirements are in line with those who are asking the students that they feel they can state that they have a 4-year plan to get to those requirements. And as you'll see, we had a 20% increase post-test in students saying they strongly agreed that they had that 4-year plan. And then for 11th graders, we asked them, what is one way to make yourself more competitive for college? And we saw a 13% increase in students being able to identify at least one. And then we also saw before lesson and after lesson a 4% increase in students being able to list at least 2 reasons to attend college. And then for our 12th grade data, I actually pulled some data off of the California dashboard, which is one measure that looks at our graduation rate as well as our college career indicator was where I pulled data. And the college career indicator is looking at our A to G completion, our students enrolling in dual enrollment AP, our students enrolling in pathways, SBAC scores, all these different areas that I listed. And it also uses a color indicator to represent our growth. So ranging from blue, green, yellow, orange, or red. And so what you'll see here in 2018 was the first year that college career indicator was there. So that's why that's the first year that I listed college career indicator data. And then 2020, the dashboard actually hasn't released data from 2020. So that's why these are the years I'm focusing on. But a few highlights. In 2017, our African-American grad rate was 50%. And in 2018, it actually increased to 80%. And then 2019, it did fall a little bit, but we're still seeing that overall increase, 77.8%. We're also seeing growth in our African-American students being prepared and approaching prepared on the college career indicator. So you'll see in 2018, it was 35%, 2019, it went to 43.8%. And in 2018, our Hispanic students, 34.4% were prepared for the college career indicator. And in 2019, we saw it at 48.1%. And you'll also see overall for all our students, we moved from green to blue from 2018 to 2019. So obviously, these are just a few highlights. And we still definitely have work to do. And we also can't just attribute the changes in the counseling office to this data. But I just thought it's kind of good to just take a look and see what we're seeing is happening for our senior students. And then I also wanted to share, as I mentioned, we did a needs assessment. And I thought that some of this kind of qualitative feedback from the needs assessment might also be helpful to see. So students that took our needs assessment referenced that they wanted more support in organization, time management, and study skills. And they also mentioned that they had personal concerns with finding their place among their peers and with peer and family interactions. And so for us, this demonstrates that there's a need for more social emotional learning support, possibly maybe some small groups around these topics, and also maybe some adaptations to our counseling curriculum to address these needs. From families, we heard that they believe that the counseling office can help their child when they need support, but they wanted more support with creating different post-secondary plans for their students, obtaining information on career research and career planning, and resources for helping them choose a career. So for us, this demonstrated that there's a need for families to have more information than just presentations about the college application process. They're really wanting more information to aid them in helping their child with like career planning, choosing a career, and all the different post-secondary options. And from teachers and staff, there were some common themes. So they shared that they feel that the counselors care about the students. They feel that the counselors support teachers and students. They felt that students have tons of information and resources from the counseling department. But one question that came up, which I thought lends itself well to this presentation, was are the resources too much? And do counselors need to provide more one-on-one versus being in the classroom? They can't do both. And so for me as a counseling leader, and I think also for our department, it means that there's a need for us to explain and contextualize the need and the reasoning behind having tiered supports and the what and how behind what we decide to provide individually and what's provided on a classroom level, and really the reason that we use that tiered model. So lastly, I just wanted to share kind of the shifts in growth that we plan on and how we use this information to continue to refine our programs to be more student-centered. So we recently have a new counseling position that's focused on stakeholder partnerships and social emotional learning groups. And that counselor is going to be running groups that address the needs that the students asked for. So her first two groups that she's running this spring are on mindfulness, stress management, and study skills. We also are planning on more family engagement. We're trying to plan workshops that are on topics more than just college planning, but really hitting those other areas like career planning, career research, post-secondary options that the families asked for, as well as creating affinity spaces and partnering with our PTSA president so that all families feel welcome and connected to the school. We also are launching a counseling department advisory council that will have all stakeholders represented, so that we can get their input on the direction of the counseling program and things that we have planned. We've also been engaging in a curriculum review to just go over what we present in fall and spring in every grade level, and just making sure that we think all the topics are appropriately placed, that we're covering all the needed areas that we need to cover for our students. And then, like I mentioned, we also see a need to present to our staff about the tiered counseling structure, and just kind of reminding them of the comprehensive counseling program lens that we use, and why our services are structured how they are. And lastly, we also plan to apply for RAMP certification in the near future, which is a recognized ASCA model program. It's a recognition that ASCA offers that schools can get when they're adhering to the ASCA model in terms of having a comprehensive counseling program. So those are some of the shifts that we plan on. And that's pretty much what I had. So I just wanted to thank you guys for listening and for having me, and just open it up if anyone had any questions. And my contact information is here as well, in case anyone does want to connect after this.
Thanks, Molly. Also, yeah, so if you have a question, just drop it in the chat and we can get that answered. I had actually one question just to start it off, because you mentioned when you changed your approach to giving financial aid information, did you notice a correlation between that and how many kids were actually getting financially?
I haven't looked at that data yet to see like how many students ended up receiving financial aid. So I'd have to dig into that a little more. The main data point that our district just shares with us offhand has to do with like how many of our students are completing financial aid, and then also data on like where they end up enrolling in college. So I'd have to dig into that a little more. Oh, what curriculum do we use with our counselors? So our district actually has started to develop counseling curriculum, and they also share that with us. But a lot of our counselors kind of go through the curriculum and then see where they want to make changes and what they want to present. Some of the main topics that we cover we do in 9th grade, they kind of get an overview of the graduation requirements, A through G, what's required to get to college. We also talk to them about credit recovery at that point, just so that way they're prepared and can really kind of see the importance of grades in high school and really making that transition from middle to high school. And then we do 4-year planning with the students as well in one of the workshops, so that they can start their 4-year plan, be thinking about what classes they want to take later. Another set of workshops focuses on career planning, and another one focuses on setting SMART goals. Another one focuses on professional communication, like how to write emails and kind of job tips and different things like that. And then our senior year presentations are, of course, kind of more focused on like that applying to college, the financial aid pieces, the transitioning to college after high school. Junior year has college searching built into the presentation. So we try to address both. I would say our presentations currently are heavier on the college and career topics, and we're working on integrating more social emotional into the curriculum as well. And that is where those groups that we're having that counselor run are helpful for helping us address the social emotional components as well. Oh, and then I see a question too, what's a CBO? That's community-based organization. So those are the different organizations that we work with. Like we have JCYC in our school, which is an organization that helps provide like college advising and SAT waivers for students. And we also work with U Aspire, which helps provide financial aid counseling. So they're just like our CBO partners that come into the school and help provide services to students. Oh, can I share the intervention plans for the schedule change process? Yeah, this is a document that we just started working on. Let me see. I don't know if I can pull it up right now, but if you email me, I'll put my email in the chat. And if you email me, I can totally share the document with anyone that is interested. But I can just briefly describe a little bit of what it looks like. It has we kind of have it set up so it has the different areas of the school that interventions can fall in. So it has like curricular interventions that a teacher could do in their class. It has disciplinary behavioral interventions that they might reach out to like the deans or an assistant principal for support with. And then it also has just kind of like school-wide interventions, like extracurriculars that we could connect a student with, or talking to them about, maybe doing a pathway or different things like that to increase their interest. And then there's also a section of counseling interventions. So just as an example, some of the curricular interventions might be that the teacher provides the student with a study guide for tests, or they point them to their classroom website that has a lot of resources, or they offer the student an alternative way of doing a project that works for the student. All those kind of just like adjustments that can be made without being like an actual accommodation, but just adjustments where the teacher is kind of meeting with the student and figuring out what they need. Yeah, and I can totally share the slide deck from today with anyone too. If you just email me, I will be more than happy to share the slides from today too. Okay, I'm seeing when the grad rate increased from 50 to 80, was there a dropping of a math test that had to be passed? I don't believe so. I know we used to have CASE, like the California High School Exit Exam, and that became no longer, but I don't believe that was in 2017. I know for us, just to be fully transparent, our African-American students, well, they do have disproportionate outcomes. It is a smaller population of students. So of course, anytime that you see an increase or a dramatic decrease, sometimes it could be a question of it just being a rather small amount of students. But I do think too that some of that huge increase did have to do with an increase in just the information that we're making sure is shared with students, especially around like what's needed for graduation, because at a large comprehensive high school, I think it's very easy for a lot of, students being able to know what's on their transcript and what they need to take. That information can get easily lost. So I think it's really important. That's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about making sure that there's a strong tier 1, where the students are all really being given that like power to own their own transcript and understand the whole process.
When you say like tier 1 for your different tiers, what can you go a little more in depth into like what that specifically means?
Yeah,
for like
totally.
each different part of you're doing?
Yeah, so it's just based on using an MTSS model. So it's like the whole idea of the triangle, and that, your tier 1 is that bottom tier that, all students are receiving. So that's like your classroom lessons that you're sure that it's reaching like every student that's there. And then your tier 2 is your services that some students receive. So the idea is that anyone whose needs aren't being met by that tier 1, they're receiving a tier 2 service. So that would be something like a small group that you decide to run. So a targeted intervention for those students. And then tier 1 is that smaller group of students, that tier 3, tier 2, they need more intensive support. So you're maybe meeting one-on-one with those students to follow up. Like maybe it's a student that, they did attend the classroom curriculum, they did do a small group, but they need more intensive support to like ensure that they get their college application done, or they're maybe not going to go and do it on their own. They kind of need that extra support. So, and typically, and we need to look at our data to see who should fall into which tier in terms of the supports that we're going to provide. But a lot of times we need to really focus in on our students who have been underserved in the education system to make sure that they're getting connected with those supports. Then I see another question. What is your student counselor ratio? At our school, it's around 325 per counselor. And that's kind of mostly, I'd say, across the district, that's around what it hovers around. In our school district, they've done a lot of work to try to reduce the counselor to student ratio. I know other schools where it is higher. What has been our biggest challenge yet? I think for us, there's always challenges. I I think just coming, for me coming into a school, and there were a lot of things that we saw that needed to shift. But I think through the teamwork that we did together and just really involving the counselors and getting to be part of the process, like looking at the data and devising the plans together, I think that really helped us work through that challenge. I think now our challenge is, as always, just making sure that teachers and staff have understanding of the work we're doing and that we're making it visible to them, so that they're really able to partner with us, that they understand like what we're there to support with so they can utilize us too. So I think that's always kind of our ongoing work, is just making sure that we're, continuing to share data with them, continuing to be visible to them so that they know that we're their partners and what we're working on. I also see, do you have a specific college and career counselor? So that was actually a specific shift that we made this year. So we used to have one college career counselor at our school. And while I think that there might be ways to make that work, I think at our school, it wasn't working, and that one college career counselor can't provide college counseling to 1,800 students. That's just not feasible. So then they end up kind of being put in a position where they're meeting with whoever has the opportunity to ask for it. And there's not a whole lot that can happen on like a proactive level to really make sure that all the students are getting those supports. So we specifically worked to provide PD to all the counselors to make sure that they all felt comfortable providing that college counseling in conjunction with our CBOs who also provide it, and then really incorporating those topics into the classroom lessons as well as into workshops that we offer our families, so that there wasn't any service lost by changing that college career counselor role into a regular school counselor role. We didn't eliminate the position, we just shifted to all the counselors are doing school counseling. Okay, I see another question here. Do you use the PLC model, i.e. teams of a counselor that work in a PLC that represents one of the 3 domains of the ASCA model? Yeah, we haven't used that type of model. Really, all our counselors are functioning in, I'd say, strongly in the academic and the college and career area. They definitely on a one-to-one basis address student social emotional needs, but where we're really focusing on continuing to expand is in that social emotional category, trying to figure out how we can start embedding those topics into the curriculum lessons as well. And then we have this other counselor that we've added that's providing the group counseling that will focus around social emotional topics. So it's kind of that ongoing trying to figure out how we can push more into the times that we are in the classroom without infringing more on teachers' time too, because that's, I'm sure as everyone knows, that's like a sensitive balance. So, but we want to make sure that we are addressing that area for our students too. But yeah, I think it looks like that might be all the questions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Molly, for your attending, for your time, and thank you everyone else for coming to this talk. SF Bay Area School Counselor and Education Professionals holds these talks to inform you guys all on the latest news in our field and to keep furthering your learning as we go. If you haven't already, please make sure to join our meetup group, and the link is in the chat now. And also, I'd like to add that counselhero.com, our sponsor for this event, is holding their first ever school counseling convention next Friday on February 5th. That's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The link to that is also, I believe, in the chat right now. But thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone. And thank you all for coming. And I hope you all have a great night. Thank you.